Hello, hello, and welcome back to Age of Darkness Build Orders, New and Improved, and now a series. I mean, a series of two, but still. So you may or may not have seen the first build order video about getting up to 700 income before Wave 1 on Custom Nightmare difficulty. If you're interested in that video, tech support should have it in the upper right corner. But forget that obsolete junk of a few weeks ago. We've got a new modern build for you here, guaranteed to be easier, shinier, and more handsome. So why another build order video? Well, because the first one had some problems. It was complicated, it was time sensitive, it required 20 plus stone tiles to be found and secured very quickly, not as user-friendly as I would like. It pretty much all stems from trying to get that keep as fast as possible. Now that seems to make sense because the keep is such an efficient upgrade to your income, but I've since realized that getting the keep a few turns earlier is kind of offset by the cost of getting a second stone mine so early. Fortunately, since my last video, discussions on Discord led me to a video that demonstrated that a single mine approach is about as effective as the two mine approach. So shout out to Don Ilya for his build order, which heavily inspired this change. So what we did is take that idea of a single stone mine, a later keep, and we made some minor improvements, removed some of the same negative elements found in my first build order to come up with this new and improved master solution. What makes it better, you ask? Let me count the ways. First, something I know you're all gonna love, 0 worker transfers. Yes, hold your applause. We all hate corporate restructuring. But wait, there's more. How many place quicklies do you see in that build order? That's right, it's reduced to just 1. No more diving for your keyboard with this build. We're keeping those stress levels down. Also, none of that 20% of the way through the cycle stuff. You can finally live your dreams of being loose as a goose. Thirdly, less reliant on map RNG. You know how much I hate being at the whims of RNG. I did some testing, running through the first few minutes of about 30 different maps to see what resources I could get a hold of, and here's what I found. 85% of the maps had more than 37 wood available in time for the first 2 camps. Only 70% had the 20 plus stone that we needed for the previous build, but 90% have 10 plus stone needed for a single mine build. And 40 plus wood was even lower at 64%, so I'm not even going to mess with that. Okay, I did mess with it. I can't help myself, but it actually doesn't help you all that much. Certainly not worth for the RNG. Put it together, and the old build only worked on about 60% of maps. This new build will work on more than 3 in 4. And number 4, bear in mind that that 60% is the best case where you're being as efficient as possible about finding the stone and securing it. That can be very hard to do even on the maps where it is possible. This build, you only have to secure 1 5 plus tile mine, which is very easy to do. Less stress, less restarts, sign me up. And finally, what's the cost of all these grand improvements? It's free! More specifically, I tested both the 1 mine and 2 mine builds, both for Ballista and Unit Defense, comparing them on the same map and tallying up the gold value of everything that each build has at the start of Wave 1. And the difference was the single mine build, while it does come in about 400 gold behind the 2 mine for Ballista, it comes in 600 gold ahead for units. So at worst, if you're going for Ballistas, you'll be about 1 turn's worth of income behind the 2 mine build. But if you're doing units, you'll be 1.5 turns ahead. Either way, it's definitely worth it. Oh, and I forgot one final benefit, which is that it works almost exactly the same for every faction. More on that later, but that's way more than enough talk about the build. Let's see it in action. And since this is basically the same build up to the first stone mine, I'll let Retro Me do some of the talking. Never do twice what you could do once. Or so my mother said after having me and my older brother. So we will immediately place a house because we need workers, and ideally we want houses down in the first couple seconds of the gold cycle so that they will finish before the next cycle begins. But with the new and improved build, at least for the rebels and volatists, that doesn't really matter. Even if you miss those house timings, you'll be fine. Then we immediately start clearing out the nearest forest, set all units to target strongest, and split off 1 soldier to go scouting. Needless to say, if you are not using hotkeys, it's time to start. You always want to be thinking about what are we building next cycle. This time we are building nothing next cycle, but our first 2 buildings will be lumber camps. That is because wood is our first limiting factor as we have no income for it currently. We need to find good spots for those. And by good, I mean they need to combine to at least 37 wood income. I choose that number because it's the least amount that you need to get a fast keep, and it is easily achievable in almost every map. That said, in some cases you may not start near enough wood. in those cases, just restart. It'll only cost you a couple of minutes of time. It's almost time to place our first lumber camp, so we have brought our scout, who is also going to be our building spotter, to the first good lumber camp spot, and while the army is on attack move, we will place our first camp. These little serial killer buffet paths through the forest are ideal because you have trees on both sides. Barring that, look for any concavities in the forest where the trees will wrap around your camp. That done, we will send our scout to the next lumber camp spot, and having found enough wood, we are now looking for stone. We need a patch of 5 or more tiles, i.e. 10 stone income. That is because the keep upgrade requires 20 stone, and now that we have some wood income, gold becomes our limiting factor, and the keep is by and far away the most efficient way to boost our gold income. Next up is going to be a house for more workers, and now that we've secured our wood spots, the next priority is to secure that 5-tile stone vein. So if we hadn't already found one, we'd be looking for it, but we have found one, so we're going to clear the area around it so that it will not be threatened at night when the crawlers get frisky and start looking for trouble, as you do. Looks like we found a little bit of iron already, which is incredible, but we are not ready to capitalize on that yet, so we're going to ignore it for now. Next cycle is going to be our second lumber camp, so we need to get our scout down into position to place that. Normally I'd have him sat there already, but since the battle is so close, the little rapscallion snuck off and got a few hits in. This second lumber camp is pretty much the only building that you need to place quickly in this build order because we need it to finish before the first wood cycle. So make sure you're paying attention and ready to place it within the first 5 or so seconds of the gold cycle. The next place we will need him is for the stone mine, which, as it happens, is right here. And that's not going to be for a minute because next up we're going to do another house. You might notice that the build has a very lovely alternating pattern of production building house, production building house. Just kind of worked out that way, but it is easy to remember. Those houses can just go anywhere that you don't intend to put a farm or a warehouse. We're not going to be fussing with the treasury anytime soon, and certainly not in this cramped space. We've got a pretty good buffer cleared out here now, and it's about time to place our stone mine, so we'll pull back, plop that sucker down. After that is, of course, going to be another house, but the next thing we're going to need our spotter for is 3 huts following that because we will be out of food. So I'm going to split the scout off to spot some good farmland, and night is coming up, so I'm going to send the army to start clearing the vagrants from around our town hall. Never fear, the trappings of civilization are already in recovery. We're going to drop that house down right here in Sasquatch Highway because that space is not good for anything else. And this is the point at which we truly deviate from the path of the 2-mine build into a newer, brighter, simpler future. Just think of all those people following my old build who would be panicking to find a second mine right now. Ha! Schmucks! So for your first few huts in particular, you want to aim for around 10 food each. Otherwise, you might find that you don't have the food necessary to upgrade the keep when the time comes, and that would be very bad. But it's easy to find good spots for huts early on, and you actually only need for one of the 3 to be a 10. Let's call that one my brother. The other 2 can put in a little less effort and get 9. Let's call those me in an alternate universe where I'm more than a 5. Next up is going to be 4 houses because we've got nothing better to do with our money until that 20 stone rolls in. But we're going to have to wait for the huts to finish first because our peasants are unusually picky about starvation. I mean, seriously, where are these people coming from? You're living in a hole in the ground in the forest that you dug to hide from the ravenous nightmares, and you've been gobbling your extra arm for sustenance? But you're going to be picky about how much wheat's available in town before you decide to rejoin civilization. Picky eaters, man. Alright, so we've got our 4 houses down. Next up is 2 more houses, and then after that we're just saving for the keep. Our army has finished clearing out the exclusion zone on the left, so now we're working a buffer to the south. Our master plan is coming together quite nicely. If you want to be extra safe at nighttime, you can post 1 guard at each entrance to the base, but I haven't seen any random raids in a long time for some reason, so you should be fine as long as you cleared out a buffer. There's the last 2 housing projects down before we sink all our tax money into renovating Town Hall. Too close to home, man. From here, our priorities with the army are to clear out to decent chokes in each direction, try to find a good open area for some farmland, and find a good juicy stone vein for our second quarry. While we're waiting for the peasants to cough up their hard-earned doubloons, let me just say that if you're having trouble memorizing and executing the build order, there's no harm in copy-pasting this build order into a Word document or whatever, and just each time you finish placing the buildings for the present cycle, just tab out, have a look at the next step, come back in. Nightmare mode doesn't let you do stuff in the game while paused, but it does let you do stuff out of the game. Or, of course, there's always the option to go with a StarCraft 2 player cosplaying a pro player, writing it all down on sticky notes and decorating it on your monitor. Always a fashionable unbelievable choice. This is the year we hit diamond. I can feel it. And as we hit 500 gold, 50 wood, 20 stone, finally the moment we've all been waiting for, the keep upgrade. So the keep upgrade is our first big priority out of the way. Now that we've entered the next stage with just 2 food, our next step is going to be 2 huts. So get your scout in position to spot for those. We are going to need those huts because we are going to need more population because we are going for a fast workshop. Why are we rushing the workshop? Because we want lodges. Gold is still the limiting factor for our progress, and lodges are far more efficient than houses. They get about 50% more gold per food, and they pay off in half the time. They're a very big improvement, so we gon' get it. With those down, our next cycle is just going to be a single house, so be ready for that. We're continuing to expand our empire to the south because we have not yet hit a good choke point. What we do hit is an elite, which is a bit unfortunate. That will make the choke point a little bit difficult to secure. We definitely don't have the firepower yet to deal with one of those, so we'll just have to avoid building anything in range of where the elite might go to. We interrupt this broadcast to note that turn 16 is the first time that the Order build deviates from the Vizargo and Rebel build, which is that Order does not build a house here. Up to this point, all 3 builds are exactly the same. Turns 18 and 20 also have very minor deviations. Now back to your scheduled programming. Our huts are now finished, so we can entice more one-armed men. Not like that. And then the gold ticks over, and it's time for our second big priority, the workshop. Hoping for a Leonardo da Vinci or at least a MacGyver. Build it, and they will come. It ain't cheap, so put it somewhere in the interior where it will be nice and snuggly. While we wait for that to finish, we're going to keep boosting our eco, make sure we're not wasting any wood. Next up is 1 house, 1 hut, as the Farmers Guild Constitution demands. While we've got daylight, we're going to do our best to clear out the mobs around the elite spawn point. As usual, there is a spitter in there, so we're going to need to pull that back so we can have an honorable duel of 1v6. While they're retreating, we're going to get that house and hut placed. Next cycle after that will be a lumber camp because wood is becoming a limiting factor. Then we will come back, get rid of the Wraith first. And now that we've lured him into a dark alley, bum rush and curb stomp the spitter for trespassing on our turf. It should die before it has a chance to get another shot off, and even if it does, it can't one-shot any of our units. That's the sweet sound of tax money rolling in, which means it's time for Lumber Camp Corner Pocket. Fun fact for the nerds, you want to get wood camps placed within the first 20% of the wood cycle in order to get it done in time to contribute to that cycle. Right now you may be saying, whoa, why is he placing 2 huts? That's not supposed to be happening right now. The build order's off, nothing makes sense anymore. Well, first of all, calm down, grab your stress ball. There's no need to panic. I just got the 2 huts that you should be getting next cycle, this cycle instead, because this was filmed before I made that minor change. It's not a big deal, there's just no need to place these huts this turn and suffer the 4 upkeep for an extra cycle. So finish up with your safety blanket and let's move on, because our sweet shanty shop is just finishing up, and that means we get to pimp some rides. Or houses. But now that we've gleaned the technical knowledge to build these fancy log cabins from reviewing the Lincoln Logs manual, we still need the resources to actually build them before we can start charging out-of-towners exorbitant prices for shoddy electricity and Wi-Fi. And lots of housing means lots of food. And lots of food means lots of huts. And lots of huts means lots of wood. And lots of wood means you get the idea. We're going to build another lumber camp. Now, if your wood spots are as good as ours have been on this map, you may not need to build this lumber camp yet. Since our max storage is 75, we're only going to be getting 8 more lumber out of the camp. But on most maps, you will be in more need of wood at this point, hence it being here in the build. Now, next after the lumber camp is going to be 4 huts, ironically not because we immediately need the food, but because we need to burn through as much wood as possible before it cycles over. And in order to get those down in time, you might want to use 2 spotters. I know it seems crazy to be building more wood production while we can't spend the wood that we have, but trust me, very soon we're going to need all the wood we can get. I do wish we could get the house upgrades before the wood ticks over. It does really bother me that we can't do that the way we did with the 2-mine build, but alas, with less than 40 starting wood, it's just not meant to be. But hey, we'll have plenty of food for future lodges, and we found our nice second stone vein, so things are looking up. And as soon as that research pops, it's time to gentrify. Goodbye freedom, hello homeowners association. Now here is where the unit defense and ballista defense builds finally deviate. Unit defense is mostly done at this point. You just get a barracks and maybe a stone mine for upgrades and such, but otherwise it's freestyle from here. We will come back and take a look at that, but for now we're going to follow the ballista defense, which means we need to get our stone on. And X marks the spot. As soon as the wood ticks over, we will start romancing the stone. And shortly after, in the next cycle, since we are tired of wasting wood, we are going to get our storehouse up, with our lovely new lodge neighbors paying rent just in time to boost our income by the 100 necessary to afford it. Spending money the second it comes in, the sign of a healthy budget, am I right? I assume the storehouse looks a lot like my attic. I could use another one of those too. And it appears that we have finished negotiating with the natives at this choke point, so it's time to redeploy our National Guard to the Northwest Passage. You never know what juicy resources you might find in the new land. I'm half convinced that this game is actually a subtle commentary on colonization, viewed through the eyes of colonizers' propaganda that the natives are all subhuman animals. And now it's a scandal. You're welcome, devs. By this point, you should almost certainly have found a third stone vein, and since we're going for ballistas, we want to get our stone production up as fast as possible, so plop a third mine right on there, as soon as wood allows. Yes, in this case, ours is only 3 tiles, hardly worth it, but hey, stoners can't be choosers. And what is this? Could it be? Have we fulfilled the prophecy? Yes, indeed, we have reached the end of the structured build order, and from here it is all freestyling, baby. Well, okay, disclaimer, there are 3 more things that we need. A second storehouse, 4th or 5th or whatever the next lumber camp is, and a very important detail for the ballista defense that I so often forget, ballista research. You would not believe how many times I have gotten to the Wave 1 spawn and realized I forgot something. And then I have to try and delay the horde by telling them that one joke I know, while the engineers desperately try and rig up the half-finished prototype ballistas, and the whole situation's just very awkward. So don't be a scrub like your sensei. Remember the research. I'd say at 1 minute out from the wave, if you haven't gotten it yet, make sure you do. But aside from the storehouse, camp, and research, it is all lodges and huts and mojitos and butts as far as the eye can see. So get out there and buy yourself something nice. Go crazy, YOLO. You've worked hard, you deserve it. Note that pretty much any map should have enough space for you to follow the build, but after the house upgrades, it'll be very dependent on the map as to how much income you can end up with before Wave 1 smacks you in the face. Some maps are just way more cramped and crowded than others. If you find that you can't clear fast enough to keep expanding and your money's piling up, then go ahead and throw down a barracks, start producing units, and maybe even go for researching farms and that sort of thing. If you're wondering why we haven't researched farms, fun fact, huts are far more efficient at producing gold income due to their far lower upkeep cost. Trust me, they'll say that they need running water and insulated walls, but they don't. We found a really nice iron vein, and I went ahead and claimed that for the Empire, because very soon we're going to have more gold than we know what to do with, and the limiting factor for us going forward is going to be iron, because that tech locks our next workshop, our next keep upgrade, arbalist, siege, the tier 3 range upgrade, you name it. It's that one thing keeping you from enjoying everything life has to offer, like a car or a sense of humor. About 1 minute out from the wave, you really want to start saving for your defenses, at least if you're doing a ballista defense. I like to get a unit tower at each entrance, partly as a scratching post for any wayward nightmares, but mostly so I can stick an archer in there and get almost as much vision range as a fire sconce to prevent the fog spawning any enemies in our personal bubble. Now, it's never safe to assume you know which way the wave is going to go, so just make sure that you have vision of each spot you might need to defend. Plopping down a unit tower there is a good way to do that. You can throw down some delaying walls if you think you're pretty certain, but wait until it actually spawns before you do anything like placing ballista towers. There is enough time. Once the wave spawns and you see the path in the fog,
This is the way.
Go ahead and throw down 4 or 5 ballista towers along with 2 to 3 layers of wall. Optionally leave a path for your hero to get to the front line, and you're good to go. Now you want to keep spending your resources during the wave as well, so plop down that barracks, start pumping out units, do your research on the farm, the fire sconce. Honestly, you're going to have so much income that spending your money is going to be the hard thing, even all the way up to wave 2. And again, that's because iron will be the limiting factor, so also consider researching and building your first trade bazaar, especially if you got unlucky and haven't found any iron yet. And that's because that first trade bazaar produces a lot of resources on its own, even if it's not in range of a mine. It'll give you the equivalent production of a 5 to 6 tile iron mine, which is quite good. If you're about to lose any ballistas, go ahead and sell those just before they would die. Have no fear, like dogs, all ballistas go to heaven. And that, as they say, is all she wrote for the Ballista build. Now let's hop in the DeLorean, travel back in time to just after the house upgrades, and see how life could have been different if we'd gone for the unit build. There's a quick refresher on what the build order looks like if you need it. Get yourself all reoriented, especially if you were never properly oriented in the first place. But if you've been through college or corporate employment, you've probably got enough orientation for a lifetime. What were we talking about? Oh, right, the point. Yeah, so we're doing those blue bits down there. So obviously there's not a lot of difference between the Ballista and unit defense builds, which is one of the strengths of this build order. Basically it boils down to 4 differences. After the house upgrades, you're not going to get a stone mine. Just go ahead and do some eco, meaning finish your house upgrades and good old lodges and huts. Because this time we're not jonesing for stone. What we need is as much gold as possible so we can produce as many troops as possible. Sadly, I cannot magically manifest units because I am not an absolute unit myself. So instead, I will have to resort to the barracks, which we will get instead of a first storehouse. This barracks will continue producing units constantly until and beyond Wave 1. After the barracks is a stone mine. It's not necessary, but it will help you out with your archer production. As we all know, it's against regulations for any archer to go out into the field without backup throwing stones in case they run out of arrows. If you go too heavy on producing swordsmen, you're going to be running out of wood, which is going to impede your economy growth. If you go too heavy on archers, you're going to run out of stone. So a mix of the two is the easiest. Pikemen are an option, but they're very heavy on wood, and they're not very good at map clearing because they're too slow to really escape spitter attacks and such, so I wouldn't recommend going for more than a few pikemen. If you do, then definitely get another lumber camp. Their shafts pack a lot of wood is what I'm saying, and you're not ready for it.
For a long time, Jack, I'm telling you. About 15 minutes.
But even more than for the archers, what you will want that stone for is our next difference, which is unit upgrades, which for me means the range damage and melee attack speed upgrades. If you get a single storehouse, you might even be able to get the tier 2. The more range damage you deal, the faster the archers will take down the axemen, which are the real threat. Of course, it would not be me if I didn't fail to execute my own build properly, so I actually forgot to do the unit upgrades altogether in this run. As you'll see, they're not necessary, but don't be a scrub like me, get your upgrades, it does make things easier. And finally, instead of researching Ballista, you will want to research the fire sconce so that your troops can get their balls back if they get horrified, particularly so that you're prepared if you get the malice where enemies explode in horror. Everybody loves a nightlight. What we really need our researchers on is glow sticks. That'll be what wins the war. And we'll be fully prepared to celebrate our victory in style. See? That's thinking ahead. And of course, purely to show you that perfect execution is not necessary, I also went ahead and forgot to do the sconce research. Honestly, why do you people listen to me? Do as I say, not as I forget to do. I would of course recommend getting an iron mine for the same reason as with the Ballista build. Gonna need it for future tech. Though if we're not careful, the peasants might start making paint out of it and licking the walls. Trade bazaar also a good idea either before wave 1 or shortly after. You don't really need to save up for defenses with the unit build since you've already built the units, and the wood should be ticking over just in time to give you a fresh batch of lumber right after the wave spawns. And now it's time for wild waves. Pop goes the cherry. Same as with the Ballista build, we want a unit tower up at each entrance prior to the wave spawn, primarily to provide vision for defenses. Once you do see where they're going, plop a few more unit towers down. Those will be loaded with archers to kill the axemen and the spitters, which are the 2 units that will do all the damage to your soldiers. The crawlers, by comparison, are pretty much inconsequential. The soldiers can easily fight them indefinitely without taking any serious damage. Once there's only crawlers left, the battle is pretty much won. So be good and sure that you set the towers to target strongest. Otherwise, just throw down a few layers of wall in front of the towers to protect them while the axemen are disposed of, and leave a big enough gap for your melee to fit in. I got a little cocky and went pretty skimpy on the walls in this run, which caused the defense to be a little sloppy. So for comfort and safety, I'd advise making your walls a little wider and deeper than this. Here comes the wave, surf's up, bro. As you can see, we did end up getting the Horror Nova Malice, so clearly I skipped over the fire sconce research just to show you that it's not absolutely necessary. So in the actual battle, you just want to keep your troops behind where the walls are, so that the axemen and spitters will aggro onto the walls. And of course, watch the health bars. If any of them are about to die, pull them back and let them regen before sending them back in. If you right-click them about a screen away and then shift-click them back, that'll be the appropriate amount of time for them to regen their full health. Really looking forward to the campaign explaining how all of our people became Wolverine. If you'd rather do pure archer, just extend the walls all the way across the choke point except for a single tile open for your hero to attack, and you can either do 2 layers of wall deep, adding on a new layer each time the outer layer is about to fall, or you can just do like 4 layers deep and use archer towers for range. Now, you really should not lose any unit towers. As previously mentioned, I put insufficient walls in front of them. Look, the mayoral campaign's coming up. There's a lot of pandering and bribery to be done. I can't be wasting my time on superficial issues like defenses, okay? Regardless, if you're diligent about microing the troops, there's no need to lose any of them. But it does take more effort than a ballista defense. There's no right answer as to whether ballista or units is a better build. We got to 630 income with the ballistas before wave 1 and 600 income with the units before wave 1, which of course is mainly due to the difference in upkeep. If you add up the gold cost of all the difference in buildings and units and everything between the builds, the unit build is only behind by a few hundred gold. But it's ahead on unit upgrades, and it's way ahead on army production time, which means you're going to be able to map clear faster coming out of wave 1 with the unit build. So it's a matter of preference. Go with whatever is most fun for you. I know, having fun in video games is for casuals. I won't tell anybody, it'll be our little secret. And I did say I'd go over the order variant, so here we go. Are you ready? Yes, it's literally just 3 changes. Kinda 2. So on turn 16 before the workshop, you can't afford a house, so instead you do it on turn 18. And on turn 20, you can't afford 2 huts, so instead you only do 1. And that's it. So if you play all the factions like I do and you want to be lazy, you can just use the order variant for all the factions and it'll work just fine. Did you find this helpful? Did I screw up even more than I realized? Are you a unit or a ballista man? Have you found an even better build? Let us know in the comments below. We want to hear from you. No, not you. No, scoot aside. Yeah, you in the back there. You. And you would not believe how long it took to edit this, so please, if you found it useful, give it a thumbs up. It'll help other people who need it to find it. Otherwise, YouTube will not show it to anyone. And if you hated it, but you're still for some reason watching, give it a thumbs up and send it to your friend to trick them into suffering as you did. They deserve it for trusting you. And if you want more empirical gaming and entertainment, can't hurt to subscribe. But until 5 minutes from now, when an update will completely invalidate this entire build, that's all, folks. Or is it? It is.